Good to go.
A very good evening to all present here. Welcome to the third session of the Distinguished Speaker Series. I am Akshita Badkundri from the Student Speaker Nexus, that is TSSN. TSSN is a platform of students, by students, and for students created by our team members who are from ages 16 to 17 years. Our main goal is to connect inspiring speakers with aspiring students by organizing webinars conducted by experienced speakers from various disciplines and all walks of life. We try to help our fellow students to get clarity on various career options and wide spectrum of opportunities in future. Since the COVID-19 lockdown, we have conducted around 30 sessions in which over 2,500 students have participated. The first session of the Distinguished Speaker Series was conducted by Professor L.S. Shashidhara Sir on the 5th of September, where Sir talked about how to build exciting careers in science for the post-COVID-19 world. This was followed by the second session of the Distinguished Speaker Series on the 10th of October by Dr. Anand Arvind Chinchare Sir, where Sir shared his journey in science, dreams, reality, and beyond. On behalf of the TSSN team, I would like to sincerely welcome and thank Dr. Anand Deshpande Sir for gracing our platform as the third speaker in the TSSN Distinguished Speaker Series. We would also like to welcome our co-organizers from Bangladesh Eukaryotic Gene Expression and Function EUGEF group and all participants from India, Bangladesh and other parts of the globe. Dr. Anand Deshpande sir is the founder, chairman and managing director of Persistent Systems. He is responsible for the overall leadership, strategy and management of the company. He has served on numerous leadership positions at various professional and non-profit organizations like NASCOM and Indiana University, and many more prestigious associations and organizations. Sir is also one of the founding members of iSpirit, India's first product think tank for creating a vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem in India. Sir has also been a friend, a philosopher, and mentor to innumerable young minds from several disciplines. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so first, let me thank all of you for inviting me over here. It's a real pleasure to be at this forum. What makes this even more special is in some sense, is the fact that you're from Abhinav, and at least some of you are from Abhinav, and my wife taught at Abhinav for almost 20 years. She was a teacher in the junior KG class. And our kids, Ria and Arul, were both Abhinav students. So they were part of the school from pre-primary all the way through 10th. So we know the school well, and I'm really delighted to see this activity coming in from Abhinav students. And I'm very happy to be here. So thank you very much for inviting me here. I know it's always very tricky to talk to very young 16-year or 17-year-old minds. So all of you have lots of very exciting ideas and many interesting things you want to do. You're all very enthusiastic about things, and I don't want to, I just want to encourage you to continue to do what you are doing. I just wanted to use this opportunity to do this session in a more of an interactive fashion. And the way I'd like to do this today is to essentially, just one second. Yeah, so one of the things that I want to do today is to set up the context of where you might find yourselves in the next few years, and then set that up as a starting point, and then really open this out for a Q&A session. And so if you really think through the situation and the demographics that we are in, we are a country of 1.3 billion people. Okay, most of the people are young, meaning under 25. And the reality is that all of you, most of you in this room who are under 20 today, will all live past 100. So you are going to be around for the next 80 years at least. So we are looking at 2020 to the turn of the next century, 2100 and all. And because there are so many of us in this world, actually the reality is that you will have to be working till you are past 75, maybe 80, or even beyond that. So you are going to be working, if you were to start working in 2025, all the way till 2085. So it's a long period to come. So what I wanted to point out to you is that Your starting job or the first thing that you do is just a small portion of what might happen for you in the next 80 years. The second thing I would like you to observe is that if you observe what was happening 10 years back, 20 years back, 30 years back, and try to extrapolate that forward. So, for example, the internet did not really exist 30 years back as we know it. In India, we did not have cell phones that were as prevalent 25 years back. In the last 20 years, we have seen the growth of Amazon and many other e commerce solutions. Some of the kind of internet based things we do today could not have been possible just 5 years back, for that matter. So all of a sudden, you see the rate at which technology is evolving. And if you extrapolate this further, I think the next 20 years or 30 years are going to be very different and quite exciting in that way. So a lot of changes are expected over the next few years. And since this is the situation, trying to think about being very precise about what you might want to do next is really difficult and tricky. So I do think that life is going to be a little bit more complicated for you all as compared to the life we or our parents lived. Most of us were quite happy going to college for 4 years, joining a job and staying there for the next 40 years, and then retiring. Such life will not be possible for most of you who are in this room right now. So, under these conditions, what should you be thinking about? So I'm going to share with you 4 C's of 4 important things that you need to be thinking about. And I will explain that in a minute. So the 4 C's are, the first C is continuous learning. Okay. The second C is about collaboration. The third C is about communication. And the fourth C is about commerce and cash. So these are the 4 C's that I'm going to mention to you as very important things that you should be thinking about now, and how to go about this when you go along. So let's start with the first one, which is continuous learning. See, as you would appreciate, right? If you have to work from now until the next 75, 80 years, you are going to be around for that much time. The kind of education that any educational institution can offer to you now is not going to be very relevant for 5, 10 years or even beyond, even if it is relevant for that long. So whatever we learn now in colleges is not going to be very valid forever. So the reality is that all of you will have to be continuously learning. And if you see the trend in the last, let's say, 6 to 9 months of being online, you would have seen the disruption that is happening in education in a big way. So we are not restricted anymore to education to go to a classroom and learn from colleges anymore. You already see a lot of online education happening, and this is only going to expand and grow. So you will have access to education at all times, and you will have to learn on an ongoing basis. And one of the important things to learn right now is to learn how to learn. This is a skill that is hard to acquire and retain. So if you don't do this well and you just sort of focus on just learning rather than learning to learn, you will miss out on this ability to figure out how to learn to learn. So the first skill is to be able to do continuous learning. And in the short term, you need to learn how to learn. The second skill, as I mentioned to you, is relating to collaboration. And this is something that I think we in India don't do as well. So it seems like when there's an assignment or something, everybody collaborates, but that is only within the group that you work with. But when it comes to collaboration with people across different walks of life, different kinds of things, or different parts of the world, we tend to do not as well as we would like to see this happen. And which is why I like the TSSN. Just one. That's why I like the TSSN, because the TSSN is creating a good network for students to know each other and to know everyone else around you. And I don't want to say something which is a little bit maybe not obvious to a lot of you at this point. But one of the things that I have observed is that when I go to, so I've been attending a lot of these 25-year celebration, 30-year celebrations after college, or reunions of different kinds. And you will find that the most people who are in reunions tend to discuss about, um, all the other things that they do or all the things that they learned from college. So if you go to a college reunion that is 25 years later, most of the people who attend those reunions will talk about things that they did outside college. They don't really remember any of the classes that they attended. So the classes are important, but all the other things that you do become equally important or even more important in the long term life of yours. So the friends and relationships that you will make now as part of TSSN will last you a very long time. So it's good that you are doing this. And learning to network and collaborate with each other is one of the best and the most important skill that you need to acquire. The third thing is around communication. And today, what is happening is because of the way we are communicating, and this is just the start, you are going to see different forms of communication becoming very important. And ability to communicate, not just in terms of writing or presentations, but all of those things put together. How do you put videos together, or how do you make your point across? How do you understand and explain something very crisply to other people? That is going to be the key to success. So collaboration and communication, these all go hand to hand, and this is very important. The last thing I want to mention is a slightly different point. And here, what I'm suggesting is that as you look ahead, jobs are not going to be long term jobs. You are going to see what is known as the gig economy, or what is known as the Uberization of jobs. What this means is that instead of having one job that you will retain for the rest of your life, or you will work for a company for a long time, more and more companies will hire people for a short period or a short project. So I'll give you an example. So one good example is, let's say you want to look at making a movie. So when you make a movie, typically what happens is you bring in the crew together, the directors, the actors, everyone else together. They work on that movie, but at the end of the movie, the team is dissolved. And when you make a next movie, you make a fresh team to go with it. Something similar happens in, let's say, IPL cricket. So if you look at Chris Gale as an example, he tends to play with several teams even within a season. So he'll be playing the IPL, he'll play the Pakistan League, play the Big Bash League, he'll play the Sri Lanka League. So he'll play for West Indies in between. So these kinds of things are starting to happen. So each one of you is going to be working for yourself on an ongoing basis, and you will be responsible for your own career, and you have to manage your own career and manage your own commerce and your cash, and you must understand how to run your own business in a way where you are at least to start with as one person business, your own business. So what is going to happen is each one of you needs to become an entrepreneur, and this is going to be important, and it's important to understand the value of money, the management of money, cash flows, and various other things like that. So I think this is what I wanted to get started as an introductory setup. Let me now invite questions from you all as a next step, and let's just figure out how to answer your questions and focus on things that may be more relevant to you. So I don't know if this made sense, Akshita.
Yes, sir, definitely. So now that you've set the context, Nayan and I have shortlisted a few questions that we got from the attendees. So we can proceed on with that questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
The first question is, the COVID-19 pandemic has been an eye-opener. It has led to significant changes in the education sector and its dependence on the IT industry. In this new normal, what are your views on the relationship between technological advancements and the need for reforms in education?
It's a very interesting question, and I think it'll be good to let's see that. Let me just. Can you just stay online because it's kind of very difficult for me to speak to myself right now.
Sure, sir.
So if some of you stay online, that may be easier, at least for me. No, so what I was explaining to you is that yes, in the last 9 months, you've seen the fact that online education is starting to become in a big way, and people sort of started out by thinking how realistic it was. Online education, in some form or the other, has been around for the last 10 years or so, but it has not been as popular as it has been forced to in the last 7, 8, 9 months. So all of a sudden, everyone is thinking online education and say, hey, this doesn't seem all that bad anymore. So why not keep this on and keep this going? So I do believe that online education is here and it's going to come and stay. And if that happens, and if people are going to do more and more online education, then the question is what is going to happen in college and what's going to happen in online education. And with the online education, it's very clear that not all of it needs to be synchronous, which means you can sign up for classes that were already recorded, pre-recorded videos starting to happen. I watch a lot of online videos all the time, and I tend to speed them at 1.5 times the speed, and you can really watch them quite fast, and it's quite effective. I've been watching a lot of podcasts and other things. I didn't do this before the pandemic. So all of a sudden, the available content, the kinds of different things you can learn, different subjects you can learn at the same time, that whole thing has changed dramatically. So what is going to happen is that while you are going to be in college, because clearly still we don't have the concept of the degree has not gone away, but I do expect in the next 5 to 7 years that the whole need for a degree as such might go away, and people will hire individuals depending on their skills and what they know, and they can go to college to learn skills, but they could go to multiple colleges to learn different kinds of skills. And to some extent you will be responsible for your own curriculum in a way, and you will have to define your own things, saying, now I want to do some law classes while I'm doing science because IP and patent and law may be more interesting. So a lot of the flexibility that today is driven by is sort of not there because you're forced to do a degree, might go away. So I think students will be free to do various things at various places.
Sir, I'd like to ask the next question. Advances in technology have always had a ripple effect on creation of new jobs and employment patterns. The
Yes.
requirement for humans to adapt to the changing world by sharpening their skills is growing exponentially. According to you, how would the rapid changes in technology affect the job market and its dynamics in the next 10 years?
See, I think there are, again, I want to throw this into two dimensions. One is on the technology jobs. So clearly, there is going to be a lot of technology getting built. There is a lot of different things that are happening on an ongoing basis. And this technology will be applied to different kinds of areas, whether it's agriculture, food, water, whatever. So it's important that everyone be aware of technology and be adept at it. So everyone, I think, needs to learn how to be programming for that matter, because you're going to have to learn how to get these kinds of things to operate and get going, and you need to get good at it. And the applications of technology are going to be in every discipline of the business and all that stuff. So if you are into, say, let's say agriculture, then you need to know what's new and happening in the technology space so that you can apply it to your own agricultural related stuff. So I think this sort of spread of technology across various things is going to only accelerate in the next few years.
So, sir, this spread of technology and the new and happening things that might happen, are there any technological trends that you foresee in the next decade that the students of 2020 should be aware of?
Yes. No, so I think these things are going to definitely happen. Okay. So I don't think there is any might in this one. There's definitely, these things are definitely there. So, okay. So on the technology side, or from the side that I work in, so I do a lot of work in the IT, data, software kind of business. Let me start from some of the top trends that I see from the tech side and their application to other areas. So I think there is a lot of action going on around artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data science. So I think this is here to stay, and this is going to really transform the industries as we look ahead in the future. So AI, machine learning, and data science is one big, broad bucket of area that I think is going to happen in a big way. I think the other thing that will become very dominant is if you look at some of the stuff that is coming in, especially along 5G and networking around various kinds of high bandwidth and throughput networking. I think that's going to create a new set of opportunities around our augmented reality and how we visualize things and 3D holograms and a whole bunch of new kind of visualization and other kinds of paradigms that you're going to see. The advantage of that is going to be in various different areas. So training, as we see it, you'll see more 3D stuff. You'll see more visual things happening in a way. Today, most of our visual has been on flat 2D screens, and that will become more, holograms and more interesting things around that. So this will have an implication in terms of how you might see the use of this will go into education and various other areas, including medical sciences and other places. The third area that I think is going to become very important is that with all the kinds of data that is getting collected, we are going to see a lot of data getting collected. And all of this data will be available for doing science against that. So these are going to be big projects where we are going to collect lots of data and then look at how to manage that kind of data. So that's another area that I think is going to be very relevant in the future. While all of this stuff is going on, security is a big area, because how do you keep this data and all the other things that you're doing very secure and protected, and how do you ensure that some bad people are not going to take advantage of some of the things that are there. And there are a lot of issues around privacy and security that will become very important. So these are the four tech software areas that I think are going to be very relevant. In addition to that, if you look at some of the newer areas, I think I personally believe that energy and climate related issues are going to become the dominant themes for the next 10 years or so. I think you will see a lot more action around how do we reduce the energy footprint that we have today per individual, and how do we make that much more efficient. So you're going to see a lot more next generation cells, solar cells, or hydrogen, or whatever else, different kinds of non non-fossil fuel related, energy related activities in a big way. I believe that biology is going to be an interesting. We are at a very interesting cusp in terms of next generation biology, and you will see a lot more advances in 3D printing of organs to all kinds of very exciting things that where technology is going to play a major role in some of these kinds of areas. So anyway, so point is there's a lot happening in technology. I think there is going to be a lot of opportunities. One important thing I want to point out, and then I will take the next question, is the fact that if you look at some of these areas, they are going to be interdisciplinary. So it's not going to be just biology is not going to be what biology was 10 years or 20 years back. The next 10 years of biology is going to have a lot of computer science in it. It'll have a lot of mathematics in it. It'll have the next generation of physics in it. And all of these things will come together in terms of where this might go. And I think there's a news, all the stuff around quantum computing also is going to be pretty interesting in the next 10 years. So I think, for some of you who are early in your career right now, looking at research and areas to focus on as you look ahead, I think the landscape is very exciting.
Sir, that is very intriguing. So moving on to the next question. What are leading companies like Persistent Systems looking for in the young graduates of tomorrow?
See, it's like this, right? So we are looking for people who are bright and who have a spark, and who have. So traditionally, on what we do, we tend to look for programmers. So we like to take people who know how to write code, and who can basically who are programmers. But the thing is, the reality is, we can teach people how to do programming. So we are able to run a little bit of a course and get people to get better at programming or whatever else. But we are looking for people who have good attitude, who are who have the zest to work, and who are enthusiastic about getting things done. So that is very important. At this moment, I must. So some of you here who are in the sort of college and all that, saying, "Oh, this is all very high level and whatever." So let me give you the reality also. So how the recruitment process happens today, but and also explain to you how it might change in the future. So today, what happens is the most of the recruitment happens on campus placement kind of situations. So what happens is we are invited to go to a college. The college will make a list of the students. We are supposed to interview them within a couple of hours or within a day, make them offers, and then once they get an offer, typically, they have to wait till everyone gets an offer, and then it gets the second round. So it's usually a cycle like that. It is dominated by the TNP people in colleges. Now, when you have a model like this, what happens is that if we have to hire, let's say, 1,000 people. So people do a little bit of a modeling to see how many colleges do you need to go to get the best quality of 100,000 people and all that. And in most cases, you are comparing. So we are recruiting you as compared to other people we see on campus. So we would go to a campus and say, we want to make 8, 10 offers. So here are 70 people we meet, and we're going to pick the 8, 10 best of those class. So when you have to do that kind of a strategy to pick the best people available in a short period of time, the easiest thing to look at is to look at grades. So look at grades, look at what people have done in the past, run an interview, run a test, run interview, and then hire the best possible people who have the right attitude, having made some basic guidelines on the grades. So this is the way it's happening today. I do expect that in the next 3 to 5 years, uh, it'll become more individual centric. So I think the TNP may not will get disaggregated in this thing. Like everything is sort of getting direct to consumer. I think employer to employee, that direct bond will happen. The TNP might get disaggregated from this. If that happens, then people are more likely to hire people who have the right skills rather than necessarily the grades. But at this moment, I would recommend that all of you should think about colleges, get to the best possible college you can get to, because you will get the best network you can get to. And second, while you are in college, best get the good grades, because that's really what is going to drive the first set of jobs that you get. But don't get overly stuck on that. That's the balance that you'll have to do while you go to college.
Okay, sir. So, considering the hiring process and rewinding a bit from that, what skills do you think that people before getting into college should need and after college?
No, so I shared with you the four skills that I think are important for everyone to have, the four C's that I mentioned. So those are the four things that I think everyone should be doing and is part of their thing. Then in addition to that, let me sort of tell you, since you guys are in 11th, 12th kind of situation, let me sort of explain to you the reality of where you are today. I think it matters a lot for you at this moment. This may not be the case 10 years from now, but today in your case, I think getting to a good college is important. And I would go further and say that getting to a better college, good college is more important than necessarily the subject you pick. So if you have a choice in saying that, I'm getting into a good college, but maybe not the best department, versus I'm getting the department of my choice in a slightly poorer college, if you have to weigh between the two, I would weigh for the college over the department in some sense. And the reason is, what matters at the end is the network you build. And the main difference that you get between, say, and we'll take an example. So if you have to go to an IIM for an MBA versus going to a local college for an MBA, the curriculum is usually the same. What is different is the students who come. So if you go to an IIM, you'll get all the students who are at a particular aspirationally, intense, and being in that company of those kinds of students will give you a better track to your future than going with whoever. So again, going back, continuous learning, collaboration, communication, and then understanding commerce, understanding money, importance of how to create value. Those are things which are important, I think, that everyone should be thinking about.
Sir, the next question is, the current trend is towards more and more multidisciplinary skill development.
Correct.
What is advice for students to develop such creative skills?
So as I mentioned to you, right, so next generation of science is going to be all about combining various things across various different kinds of things. And most of the teams will work today. A lot of science is happening in a team way. It's all called team science in some sense or the other, right? So if I'm doing a big astronomy project, it's not just astronomers working on it. You'll have astronomers, you'll have physicists, you'll have mathematicians, you'll have computer scientists. So it'll be a team of multidisciplinary people, even including maybe you might find biologists in an astronomy team as well. So science has become complicated. It is very hard to work alone. You are going to work in teams, and teams need to be multidisciplinary. So if you are a scientist in a particular area and you want to do research or other areas, you need to have an understanding of what you can ask other people. How can you quickly understand from other people? So your breadth of knowledge of overall scientific things is important. Now, how do you get it, right? So two, three things you can do. One is to talk to different people. So I'll tell you how I learn. Okay, so I'll give you two things that I do for myself to learn. One is one thing I find very useful is, if you teach something, it's the easiest way to learn. So explaining something to someone else, so explaining that to your kids, to your wife, to your parents is a good way to learn. So if you sort of say, take a concept and teach it to other friends, your colleagues, whatever else. So that gives you multiple benefits. You get a chance to communicate, you get a chance to sort of simplify the concepts, because people will ask you questions and you should be able to answer them. And when you explain something to someone, it's very effective to learn. So I sort of suggest that that's one strategy that I find very useful for me. Explaining it to someone is a good way to learn. The other thing that I do is that I find that, if I have to learn something about a particular topic, I usually find someone who is an expert in that and then pick their brain a little bit. So go to them, read a little bit, go to them, ask questions, interact with them, and then you get to learn from them. So that I find is a very effective way, in addition to what you can do online with courses or reading books or things like that. So it's a combination of reading, but really things get much better when you do things. And if you can't do them, one way is to explain something what to do, and then learning from other people as well. So this whole ecosystem works very well for me.
So, taking this a step ahead, interaction becomes a very important part of our day to day life as the
Correct.
world will become more multidisciplinary. So, while we are mainly focused on improving human and tech interactions, what is your advice for improving human interactions in the new world?
No, so I think human to human interactions, as I mentioned, in terms of collaboration as well, right? So I'm talking about human to human interaction as well. So I think one of the best ways to learn is to learn from other people as well. So I'm saying that yes, there's be technology to do this. So let's say if you, so for example, let's take an example. So let's say you want to learn a little bit about, say, astronomy. Yes, you can go online, learn courses on astronomy. But what happens is on your own, if you're learning, you may or may not get it right. So you might find it much easier to find a friend and say, okay, you learn chapter one, I'll learn chapter two. We will sit together. You explain chapter one to me, I'll explain chapter two or whatever else. And let's discuss both of those. And we will get much better at it because both of us have interacted in the context of what is available on technology. So you have to leverage technology, but it's a combination of bringing it all together that makes it very exciting. So I think this kind of group learning or collaborative learning is going to happen in a big way, and interacting with other people is a very exciting way to do this, which is why I like what you guys are doing in the TSSN.
Sir, the next question is based on your personal experiences. We have seen the IT industry and many other sectors grow from the 1990s to the 2020s. What was your experience as an entrepreneur 30 years ago when you started?
Actually, you will not imagine how hard it was at that time. Just to give you a sense, okay, meaning if you just look at the way okay, the software industry or the business that we were in the 1990 onwards, we've been in the business of selling software or building software products. Most of our customers tend to be in the US. So we do a lot of communication on the network and various other things. You wouldn't imagine or believe that it would take 6 months to get a telephone in 1990. So if I had to get a phone, I had to book it in advance, and 6 months later, you would get a phone. All right. The cost of telephones were horrendous, meaning it would cost you, if you have to make a call to Mumbai, we had this concept of a pulse. So every 3 minutes was one phone call, which would be about 2 rupees. And if you're making a call to Mumbai, for 3 minutes, it would cost easily 20 rupees. And if you're making an international call, it would cost you almost a rupee to 2 rupees a minute. Okay, so it was horrendously expensive to make communication happen. Internet did not exist in that time. So, it was a nightmare to see how to communicate from one place to the other. How do you write software for various things? We used to have 300% duty on machine. So if you're buying a PC, instead of paying 100 rupees, well, nothing was 100 rupees. But if you had to buy a PC which was 5 lakhs, you would have to pay a 300% duty, which means 15 lakhs of duty. So you'd get it for 20 lakhs if you bought it in the market. So you had all these export zones and all these other things. So life at that time was very complicated. I think India was in a pretty, should I say, medieval ages as far as technology and software was concerned. But I think in the last 30 years, I'm really proud to have been part of this industry where we have seen the dramatic rise of the importance of India in the technology space, and the fact that, the growth and the rapid rate of change that we have seen in the tech industry in the last 30 years. And I think the next 30 years should be even more exciting.
So, sir, in those earlier days, how did you deal with the setbacks and failures and yet continue to keep focus on your goals and objectives?
So that's a hard question. The point is, so let me say the following, okay? Setbacks and failures are nothing to do with early days, okay? You have setbacks and failures all the time. All right, so everyone has setbacks and failures every day. Every time you are looking at things that go right, some things go right, some things don't go right. And that's pretty much the way it is, right? So what happens and what makes the difference between success and failure is the fact that when you fail, you have to say, okay, fine, this didn't work out. Next day, you have to come back and start again. And if you sort of say, okay, this is what I learned from it, I'm not going to make the same mistakes again, and keep moving on. Like, for example, yesterday, our team got out for 36 runs, right? It's the worst cricket performance I've seen, many. It's the worst that they have scored. Now, if they keep thinking about it too long, they will never come out of it. But I'm confident that everybody's saying, forget it, let's start again. It's a fresh day, it's a new day, and we'll see. Hopefully, we'll do a lot better in the next innings, right? So the people who kind of learn from their mistakes and keep moving and not give up, really what is makes the difference between failure and success. So we see failures all the time, or we see small failures and again, and sometimes these things can be more consequential than others, but the reality is that every failure is an opportunity to learn. Every opportunity to learn is a way to come back. So the key is to come back the next day. And this is true if you look at another athletics example. So in any event, you'll find that the between the person who wins and the person who is second or third, the difference is very small, very marginal. And if you look at those persons who have come first or whatever in a particular event, in a previous event, they may not have come first. They may not have qualified also. The fact that they did not give up, saying, oh no, I lost this event, now what do I do? Well, you have to come back the next day. So that's really what makes the difference between those who are successful are those who are persistent, who keep coming back again and again. And that's what we named our company as well, because you just have to be back. And that's what it's all about.
Sir, so what is your advice for entrepreneurs in 2020 to be ready for 2030?
So I think first thing, everyone is going to be an entrepreneur. So be prepared to be an entrepreneur. And one of the important facets of an entrepreneur is you have to take responsibility for your own self and your own destiny, and be responsible for yourself and what you're going to do. And that's really what entrepreneurship is all about. Entrepreneurs cannot afford to complain or wait for someone else to do things for them. They have to take the ball in their own hands and take it somewhere where it needs to go to. And I think as we look ahead, each one of you will have to become an entrepreneur. Okay, now having said that, one of the key things for entrepreneurs is to make sure that you understand that since you are responsible for your own destiny, you are responsible for your own life. You have to have a plan. You need to know what you are trying to do, where you need to go, and you have to work at it. And while you do it, you need to invest in things, including yourself. So make sure that you have the skills and capabilities to fight the future. And entrepreneurs cannot just think about tomorrow. They have to think about a little bit longer term also. So some of you here in this thing, yes, you are in 10th, 11th, you will go to 12th. You're looking at your admissions after 12th. Is it important? Super important. Yes, no doubt about it. That said, that's not the end of it. That is only going to get you into the first rank of college. And irrespective of where you go, it doesn't mean that you are stuck in a path for the rest of your life. So you have to have a little bit of a broader view of saying, I'm going to go do these things, but I must have this kind of an aspiration of where I want to be in the future. And you work all these things out as you go ahead. So, that's what an entrepreneur is. And I think it's important that everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. So just an example, I find that I've been talking to the Delhi government, and they have incorporated entrepreneurship mindset as part of the curriculum for, I think, 8th, ninth, and 10th standard students, or 7th, 8th, and ninth standard students. So the idea is to make everyone be an entrepreneur and understand the importance of entrepreneurship. And I think this is important for all of you as well to think about. And we can do another session on this later on. Maybe we can try some experiments on this.
We would love that, sir. So, sir, a bit about your interactions with Vishwanath and Anand, sir. What did you observe in his demeanor that might be one of the reasons why he's a world champion?
So let me first mention that, the reason that meeting happened was because of another fellow, Abhinav related guy. So this is Abhijit Kunte. So Abhijit Kunte knows him really well, and he wanted to bring him to Pune. And he said, hey, can you, I like what Abhijit does. And, I thought, fine, I can sponsor the event. So we sponsored an event, and I had the great opportunity of interacting with him for an hour. It was quite fascinating. So these guys are amazing, actually. He has a brilliant way of, he remembers all his games. Okay. Every game that he has played, he remembers and recites it sort of. So I played this move, that move, and then this and this happened, and then this is where it went. So he is really focused, very hardworking, very intense, And again, I'm sure someday he makes one mistake and that whole game will be lost. But then again, his understanding of, okay, fine, I've lost one game, but I have to come back the next day and keep fighting at it and be persistent. Those are all very, very good traits that, he has demonstrated all his life. And I was very honored to have this opportunity to chat with him about, chess. But we talked about, no, I know the moves, but I'm not a chess player. So I don't play like he does. He plays the games because he has them completely imprinted in his mind. So he knows the next 10 moves that he's going to play or what other things you might play. So he has like a amazing ability to visualize the game for like ever. And he remembers all his games and what he did with someone at that point. So it's a fantastic how he thinks, right? But yeah, meaning this is related to that. So if you want to be an expert at something, you want to be a world champion, you really have to dedicate your life to it. And that's something that he has demonstrated. So I could learn something from that. A slightly different discussion that I had with him, which is sort of very intriguing to me still, and I keep thinking about it a lot, is that I believe that a lot of chess is works well because it has a nice representation for it. So the fact that you can represent the game and you can talk about the game as saying that I move from this move to that move, this piece move, whatever. So he can recite the game by not playing the board, but by the representation of the game and the moves. I found that very interesting. So I think, if you are able to represent things in a nice way so that you can reason about it and the visualization and all of that stuff with it, then that's a very intriguing thing. Then that helps you reason about it and remember things. So I've been thinking about, representations of different things in various areas as well. We'll talk about that later. I think I'm distracting this discussion.
Sir, so in addition to persistent systems, what other interesting projects are you currently working on? Can you please share the details?
Yeah, sure. Meaning one of the other big things that I'm working on for the last 5 to 6 years is a personal foundation that I started called Deyasra Foundation. And just give you a little bit of a history on what I'm working there. So, sort of, I believe that every one of us has a responsibility to the rest of the world. So what happens is that we are living in a world where we need to give back as well. So, and the more you give, the more you get from the system. So I think I had this thing that I had to do something more meaningful than just work on persisting. So I was looking at one big problem, and one big problem that I'm working on right now is largely on employment and employment creation and creating jobs and entrepreneurs at scale. So the Asra Foundation is a family foundation. So just like you have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that Bill Gates set up, who is kind of one of the guys that I track, or the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation. These are all personal family foundations. So I have created my own personal family foundation. It's called Deyasra Foundation. So D is for Deshpande and ASRA are the initials of the family members, Anand, Sonali, and our two kids, Ria and Arul. So that's how Deyasra comes in. And when you do a family foundation or a personal foundation, you can take a little longer term view, look at problems that might take few years to work on. So I've been really focused on helping individual entrepreneurs be successful. So the idea is that we have templated everything that a very small business needs. The group that I'm focusing on are those who operate make between 5 lakh rupees a year to about 50 lakh rupees a year. So really small businesses, the food counters, um, the dance class or things of that kind. So individuals who are making, between 5 to 10 lakhs to all the way to 25, 30, 40, employ between 2 and 5 people. So really small, tiny businesses. So we have templated everything that small businesses need and how to help them scale. And we have about 120,000 businesses supported so far. So this is a fairly large team for us right now. I have about 40 people working on with me, and we are trying to see how to so if everyone has to be an entrepreneur, how do we help them be successful? So it's the same concept, when I said that we'll do an entrepreneurship related stuff, I'll get some of the people from the Asra team and we'll work something out where we'll show you some of the things that you need to do if you want to start your own business.
That'll be great, sir. Another question we had was, so you're an avid reader. Can you please tell us about your favorite books and your reading habits?
Yeah, so I read many books at the same time. Okay, so I don't just do sequentially on the books. Now, unfortunately, last few months, I've been a little bit stuck because of the fact that I used to read a lot more when I was traveling. Right? So every time I used to travel a lot, meaning every other month I would go to the US. So it's like long trips, 10 hours between trips, between meetings. So you end up reading a lot. So I would carry a bunch of books with me and read them all at the same time. So that's how I tend to do this. A lot of the books I tend to read are either business books or tend to be a little bit more biographies or things on the uh, so I don't typically read that much fiction actually. So I tend to read the biographies, or I read um, books relating to whatever technology or things of that kind. So there are several authors that I like. Some of the books that I think you guys should read that I read recently would be I saw the just 1 minute. Let me remember the books. So there's a book called Atomic Habits, which is quite nice. I think I would recommend looking at that. Um, Currently, I'm reading a book that a friend of mine wrote. It's called, I'll show you the one I have here. It's called Beyond Great. So, this is another book I'm reading. But yeah, so I have several books that I read at the same time. I also started to read more on Audible these days. So, I've been listening to some books as well. And one of the best books that I found, which relating to entrepreneurship or business, has been a book by Ram Charan, which is what every CEO wants you to know. Another book that I would recommend to you all is a book called Designing Your Life. This is actually a very interesting book for you all, and I'd recommend you look at it. Let me think, I'll give you the names of the authors also in a minute, but Designing Your Life is the name of the book. It's available in paperback. And the idea is that there is this whole concept of design thinking. So what these two professors have done, one of them is in Stanford, the other one is in Berkeley. They work together on some of these areas, and they have applied design thinking to life. So it gives you a very nice way of how you might want to plan your career and all that, and what should you be thinking about. How do you ask yourselves questions to get better at what you might be doing? So that's really what that book is all about. Uh, if you look online, you should be able to find this book. It's called Designing Your Life.
Sir, so the next question that we have is, there are a lot of disadvantages to technology, and India is directly shifting to online, which is very new for us. And so, will it not affect the economy of India?
In what way?
Uh,
See, the thing is, okay, sorry, don't want to put you on the spot. But the reality is, see, online is inevitable. Okay, so people are going to do things more and more online. If you look at e-commerce and commerce sites and people buying and selling on Facebook, this is starting to happen in a very big way. And I think digital infrastructure is getting better, and more things are going to happen online. So I am not convinced, or I don't believe that online commerce is necessarily bad for India.
Sir, another question we got is, looking back and sitting in a time machine, if you were to meet your own self of 16 years, what advice would Dr. Deshpande of today give to that 16-year-old?
Yeah, so I would try to be broader than I was when I was a 16-year-old kid. See, as a 16-year-old kid, right, I grew up in Bhopal. My father worked in Bharatiya Electricals, and I grew up in Bhel Township. And we had no idea about what all we could be doing. So, everyone in the group was an engineer. All my parents, and all his friends, everybody was in it was an engineering company. We were working in Bhel. They were all working in BHL Township. So pretty much everybody in my class, it was all, admissions were very hard to get. Most people ended up depending on your marks and your grades. So if you had good marks, you could go into engineering or medicine. And what happens in that kind of a situation is that everyone thinks that if you get good marks, then you have to go to one of them because you can. Oh, there are only so many seats. If you can't, if you are gotten in there, you have to go there. So there was this whole push around engineering and medicine and this whole thing around that. So yes, I got into IIT, so I was at IIT. So that's pretty much how it became. So it was a very single track life. And for the first, till I actually went to the US, when I went to Indiana for my PhD in 84. Till then, I had a very, very single track thinking, so you have to do this because everyone else needed to do this. You all went to the US because half the class was applying, you followed the herd, right? So everything that was seen as hard and aspirational, everyone would kept following that. So why did I go to IIT? Because it was hard to get in. Everyone wanted to get in there, and I got in, so I went there. So it was not really. We didn't think too much about many other things. So we did not spend much time looking at other areas. So I don't need arts or literature for IIT, so forget it. Don't worry about it. Or I don't need to read biology because in the 4 tests that they ask for JE, there is no biology test. So we were very kind of bad about sort of not being very broad. So at that point, if I were to advise myself as a 16-year-old, I would tell me that learn how to be more open to ideas, how you should look at collaborating better, or how would you communicate better. Some of those things happened more by accident than by a plan. And continuous learning was something we never thought of at that point. It was mostly, okay, you got to do this exam now, so figure out how to optimize your score on that exam. So that was the only objective we had.
Okay, sir. So we saw some news that you are also associated with important national science projects such as Manav Atlas and Indian Cancer Genome Atlas. Can you share the details of these projects and your role in them?
Yeah, sure. See, one of the things, just to give you a sense, right? So I've been in the data business for the last 35, 40 years. So I work in data technologies and related things, both at Persistent. My PhD was also on data related stuff. And so the idea is that if you bring lots of data together, then you can do very interesting things. So for example, take this cancer project that I'm working with Santosh and others. So the idea here is that when someone has cancer, typically there are certain biological or genetic reasons that may be responsible for that particular cancer. Now, the idea is that if I know that someone has cancer and also has these kinds of genetic properties or genetic attributes, the question is, what happens to someone else who has the same genetic attributes? Are they also likely to get cancer, or are they not likely to get cancer? Are there any correlations between people of different kinds or people of different areas? So that can be done if you have large amounts of data. So if you have large volumes of data, then you can do this. I'll give you another example that maybe you have seen. So if you look at Netflix, for example, and you start watching some movies. So if you watch 2 movies, they will start recommending you, saying that, okay, you seem to like these kinds of movies. Here are other 10 movies you might like. How does that happen? It happens because they are looking at movies that a lot of other people have seen. So if you have seen these 3 movies, other people will see the same 3 movies. They have also seen 4, 5, and 6. So maybe you will like 4, 5, and 6. So this whole correlation of how people are making these kinds of decisions across various things has become very exciting. And people do this to the extent, especially Netflix, okay? And we can do another session differently on artificial intelligence and how machine learning is being used for making these kinds of recommendations and recommendation engines. So this is a very sort of happening science at the moment. So a lot of these kinds of science right now needs to happen. You need next generation data. I'll give you another example. This is if you look at, there's a lot being written on or has been written on something called the fourth paradigm in science. Okay, so the idea is in the first paradigm, what happens is that you observe things. So Galileo or Newton, they observed things and they reported it. The second one, people started to make theories around it. So they would make a theory that Maxwell's equation, this is going to happen, and we predict them. And now that you have predicted them, you see if the observations align with that. That's typically the second paradigm. The third generation of stuff is you start making computer models and you sort of model all of that stuff and you expect where it is. In the fourth thing, what people are doing is they're collecting a lot of data and trying to make inferences on the basis of data. And that's sort of where the next generation science is moving. And that's something that fascinates me. And I'm very fascinated by biology also. So I've been trying to work with groups that are interested in these kinds of data related problems where there is a lot of data where one can create these correlations and other things. And if you have good quality data, then a lot of the deep learning and machine learning that people are talking about can only work well with good quality data. So, Manav, again, the idea is to get students to think about research papers, collect data around certain things. And if you get enough good quality data, then we can do better science using that. The ICGA or the Indian Cancer Genomics Atlas project is very similar. So we want to collect data about Indian cancer patients. If we have good quality data, then we can do good quality science against that. Another one that I'm doing right now is we just launched a Center for Artificial Intelligence for the gems and jewelry industry. Again, another similar idea. So how do you get people to look at fashion differently, and how do you decide what kind of gems and jewelry is somebody likely to buy? So a lot of different kinds of things going on.
Sir, before we move on, I would like to ask you if we could extend the session by 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, I can stay, but I don't know about your audience. But
So the next question we have is, you have interesting ideas on how to plan the 4 decades of your work life. Can you share those concepts?
yeah, so that's a little different idea. I'm not so sure is that relevant for you all, but let me share with you what I tell people. So I do a lot of I work more closely with people in the mid 40s. Okay, so that's sort of the group that I talk a lot about career management, or the group in the 30s of people who are already employed, because in my job, I don't really meet a whole lot of 16-year-olds actually. I tend to meet more of the people who come to persistent or people who are working. So here's what I tell them. Okay, I'm going to tell this to you right now, but maybe it's something for you to keep in the back of your mind, not get too overly concerned on it. So what happens is, I'll tell you the motivation of what happens. This is probably relevant to your parents and other things. So what happens is that we are so single track. We follow a track and we just keep doing that thing. And people go into companies expecting that companies are going to give them a career path, and as companies, as you get senior, the organization tapers down, and a lot of senior jobs are not there for senior people. So people in the mid 40s get a little frustrated about what I'm trying to do and why I'm trying to do things. So what I have is a formula which says the following: that in your first 10 years of your career, you should focus on learning and networking. So that is the key, which is what I'm trying to tell you also in a slightly different way, that you should learn how to learn. Continuous learning. Collaboration is what networking can be. So networking with people, and how do you learn to work with each other. So first 10 years, you should focus on learning and networking. The second 10 years, what I tell people is that you should become an expert at something. Remember, I'm not asking you to become an expert in your first 10 years. So I'm not telling even undergrad students or you all that, oh, you should become an expert at something. There's time for becoming an expert. Right now, you need to be learning as much as you can. So that's your goal. Not worry about, are you an expert at something? It'll take some time to become an expert. You can't become an expert just out of nowhere, right? So you have to prepare on it, work on it. So in your second 10 years of the career, so between 32 and 42-year-old, typically you want to become an expert at something. In the third 10 years, between 42 and 52, 52 is sort of today's situation now. This might change by the time you guys become 52. That's sort of when CXOs get happen. So if you want to be a CEO in a big company, whatever, that's sort of the time when you will hit that kind of a situation. So between 42 and 52, you need to plan how to get to your corner office and work your way to it rather than the other way around. So when you are a 30-year-old or when you are a 16-year-old, you get a good opportunity, you should take it. You see a good thing to do, you get a good activity to take it. But when you are 40s, you have to think about, by taking it, are you getting into a track that might distract you? So you have to have a focus of where you want to be and then work your way to it. And in the last 10 years, today's context, what I tell people is you got to do what you got to do, but you got to mentor and also figure out a way to have things to do post retirement. If you don't set yourselves up to do things beyond retirement, then after you retire, nobody will invite you. And this is just the reality. So again, you guys are very far away from that. Second, by the time you get to retirement, I think this world would be very different. So probably not relevant for you right now.
So, sir, the concluding question is from Team TSSN to you. What is your advice for TSSN and expectations from the group in 2021 and beyond?
No, so advice, as I said, you guys are doing the right things by using this opportunity to one, the four C's that I'm trying to suggest to you. One is continuous learning. This is a good way for you to learn different kinds of things. I'm sure when you meet different kinds of people, they're sharing different things, and you might pick some interesting things from here. So it's not about somebody teaching you anything, it's about what you learn from them. So that's really what you are doing very well on. So I think continue to do this activity. Second, regarding the collaboration piece, again, I'm really impressed at the way you guys are operating here, and I commend you for that. I think the fact that you get all these people together, collect feedback, interact with each other is really giving you a lot to learn. And I think instead of necessarily depending on other people like us to tell you things, I think you guys can tell each other a lot more about what you do and whatever else, or distribute work around it and figure out how to work together and do amazing things together. So I think that collaboration piece that you are looking at, I think, is very important, and I think you guys are doing that anyway, and that will allow you to communicate as well. So this is a good way for you to communicate with different people. You are asking me hard questions and you're putting me on the spot, so that's a good thing. So you're getting to learn to ask questions and think through it, and you're communicating. It's all good. And I think you should understand, a little bit about commerce and money and business. And I think you guys had a good session on that as to how to manage investments and all that. So yeah, don't run away from those things. All these are important. People, especially around here, most of the people who are in jobs think that, oh, they need to be very technically good and all that, but they don't understand the importance of money. And I think it's important that everyone understands how to do commerce and money and managing money and business, and how does cash flows work and all of those kinds of things. So certain families who are in business tend to get it very well. People who are in jobs typically don't give that opportunity to young children. I think it's important for everyone to understand the importance of this. So I think you guys are doing a fantastic job already. I must commend you for it. The other last suggestion I would have is to look beyond what you are doing today for yourself right now. But if you give, you will get. So think about those who are not that privileged. There's a lot of kids in your situation, I'm sure, who don't have the privileges that you have. Include them in your discussions as well. See, they might have something to offer, but be open about sharing and giving. If you give, then you will get as well. And one good way of explaining this, I find, is that I'm sure you guys are on Instagram and Twitter and all that. If you want someone to follow you, you have to follow them first. So that's pretty much how it works.
Thank you so much, sir, for answering all the questions. Unfortunately, because of our limited time, we would have to end here. But we loved having you today, and we would love to have you in the future too. Over to Aditya Datta.
Hello everyone, my name is Aditya Datta. I will be proposing the vote of thanks for today's session. On behalf of Team TSSN and all participants, I extend our gratitude to Dr. Anand Deshpande sir, who took out valuable time from his busy schedule and inspired us with his thoughts and experiences. I would like to thank the director and team of Eukaryotic Gene Expression and Function Research Group, EUGEF, and friends from Bangladesh for their support to this event. A big thanks to all participants as well. It was wonderful having you all. I would also like to extend a special thanks to our mentor, Dr. Santosh Dikshit, who has been a part of the TSSN journey since its beginning. Lastly, every event requires teamwork. So I would like to thank my team members here at TSSN for making this session a great success. We request you to keep supporting the TSSN activities. Also, this is the concluding session for the year 2020, which has been a challenging and frustrating year for all of us. But after today's session by Dr. Anand Deshpande sir, we have surely ended the year on a high note. In January 2021, we will meet again with many new ideas. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you and Happy New Year.
Great.
You done?
Yes.